The early days of our relationship were like a fairy tale. Mark, with his charming smile and captivating personality, swept me off my feet. We were inseparable, spending every waking moment together, lost in a world of our own. Mark was a musician, a talented guitarist with dreams of making it big. He had a passion for music that was infectious, and I loved listening to him play. But there was something else about Mark, a darkness that lurked beneath his charming exterior. At first, I dismissed it as moodiness or artistic temperament. But as time went on, his behavior became increasingly erratic. He would fly into rages over insignificant things, his eyes burning with an intensity that scared me. I tried to talk to him about it, but he would always brush me off, claiming I was being oversensitive. He made me feel like I was the crazy one, that I was making up problems where there were none. One night, we had a fight that escalated quickly. Mark was furious, his face contorted in rage. He grabbed me by the arms, shaking me violently. I was terrified, my heart pounding in my chest. He screamed at me, accusing me of cheating, of not loving him enough. I tried to defend myself, to explain that I hadn't done anything wrong, but he wouldn't listen. He threw me down to the floor, his eyes wild with fury. I thought for sure he was going to hurt me, but then, just as suddenly as he had exploded, he collapsed into a heap, sobbing uncontrollably. He begged me for forgiveness, promising that he would never hurt me again. I was shaken, but I loved him, and I believed him when he said he was sorry. I thought it was just a one-time thing, a lapse in judgment, but it wasn't. The outbursts continued, and they grew more and more violent. Mark became increasingly possessive, controlling my every move. He isolated me from my friends and family, convinced me that everyone else was against us. I was trapped in a living nightmare, terrified of the man I loved. I didn't know what to do, who to turn to. I felt like I was losing my sanity, that I was becoming as crazy as Mark. One day, Mark came home from the studio in a particularly bad mood. He was angry about something, and he took it out on me. He started yelling at me, saying the most hurtful things I'd ever heard. I tried to defend myself, but it was no use. He was determined to make me feel as miserable as he was. I broke down in tears, pleading with him to stop. But he just kept going, his words like daggers piercing my heart. I felt so small, so insignificant. I didn't know how I could take it anymore. In that moment, I realized that I couldn't stay with Mark. I had to leave, to escape his madness. I knew it would be difficult, but I had to do it for my own sanity, for my own survival. I gathered my things and left, not daring to look back. I drove away, tears streaming down my face, feeling a mix of relief and fear. I was finally free from Mark's clutches, but I knew that I would never forget the horror of our relationship. It was a living nightmare, a reminder of how quickly love can turn into something dark and twisted. I still remember the day we first met, how his charming smile and piercing blue eyes drew me in like a moth to a flame. He seemed like the perfect boyfriend, the man of my dreams. Little did I know that beneath that charismatic facade lurked a darkness that would consume my life and haunt my every waking moment. At the beginning of our relationship, everything was perfect. We would spend hours talking about our dreams and our future, making plans for the life we would build together. But it wasn't long before I started to notice the cracks in his mask. Small, seemingly insignificant things at first, like his unpredictable mood swings and bursts of anger over trivial matters. He would apologize profusely after each outburst, promising he would change. And I, blinded by love, believed him every time. As our relationship deepened, his behavior became increasingly erratic. He insisted on monitoring my every move, demanding to know where I was at all times. He would check my phone, my messages, and my social media accounts obsessively, convinced that I was hiding something from him. I couldn't even have a simple conversation with a male friend without him accusing me of infidelity. The emotional manipulation was relentless. He would play mind games with me, gaslighting me into doubting my own sanity. He would tell me that my family and friends were against us, that they were trying to tear us apart and that I could only trust him. Slowly but surely, he isolated me from everyone I cared about. The physical abuse began soon after. He would strike me when he was angry, leaving me bruised and battered. Each time he would apologize and cry, promising it would never happen again. I believed him, and my love for him overshadowed my better judgment. But what was most terrifying was his obsession with the occult and the macabre. He would spend hours in the basement, conducting bizarre rituals and chanting in a language I couldn't understand. The walls were adorned with strange symbols and eerie drawings, and the air was thick with the scent of burning incense. I was too afraid to confront him about it, too afraid of what he might do if I dared to question his actions. It was during one of these rituals that I stumbled upon a hidden journal filled with ramblings that made my blood run cold. In his writings, he spoke of summoning dark entities and making unholy pacts. He believed that these rituals would give him power and control over me, binding my soul to his. I realized then that he was truly insane, and my life was in danger. I knew I had to escape, but I also knew that breaking free from his grip would be no easy task. I confided in a friend who helped me devise a plan to leave without him suspecting anything. It was a dangerous game, and I had to be careful not to trigger his violent tendencies. The day finally came when I made my escape. I left while he was engrossed in one of his dark rituals, slipping away like a ghost. I knew I could never return, for I had seen the true extent of his madness and the darkness that consumed him. In the days and weeks that followed, I lived in fear that he would find me and exact his revenge. But I was determined to start a new life, free from the horrors of my past. It was a difficult journey to heal from the physical and emotional scars he had left behind, but I was determined to rebuild my life and find the strength to move forward. My experience with the insane boyfriend will forever haunt me, a constant reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath a charming exterior. I hope that my story serves as a warning to others, a reminder to trust your instincts and never ignore the red flags, no matter how much you may love someone. My heart races every time I think about him, the man I thought I knew, the man I thought I loved. It started so innocently, like the calm before a storm. He was sweet, charming, and seemed to be everything I ever wanted in a boyfriend. We'd been together for almost a year when the first signs of his madness began to reveal themselves. It was a cool autumn evening when he first whispered something strange to me. We were sitting on the porch of his family's old, creaky house, the moonlight casting eerie shadows around us. He leaned in close, his warm breath caressing my ear as he whispered, "I see them, you know. The shadows. They follow you." I shivered and pulled away from him. "Shadows? What are you talking about?" He just grinned, his eyes gleaming in the dim light. "They're everywhere, but they only come out when it's dark. And they don't like me, not at all. But they love you." I laughed nervously, dismissing his words as the product of an overactive imagination or too much horror movie watching. Little did I know, that was just the beginning. As weeks turned into months, his behavior grew increasingly erratic. He would often wake me up in the middle of the night, convinced that someone was in the house. We'd search every corner, but there was never anyone there. He insisted that the shadows were trying to steal me away, and that he was the only one who could protect me from their sinister grasp. His obsession with the shadows escalated. He began to spend hours in the basement, concocting bizarre rituals to ward them off. He hung strange symbols and talismans on the walls, covered every window with heavy drapes, and filled our bedroom with an overpowering scent of incense. It was suffocating, and I felt like I was trapped in a nightmare of his making. One night, as I lay in bed trying to fall asleep, he came in with a wild look in his eyes. He brandished a knife and claimed that he needed to cut the shadows out of me. I screamed and begged him to stop, but he only grew more agitated, slashing at the air around me. I managed to escape the room and lock myself in the bathroom, trembling with fear as I called the police. When they arrived, They found him in a manic state, muttering to himself about the shadows and how they had almost taken me. He was taken away in handcuffs, and I was finally free from his madness. The nightmare didn't end there, though. In the following weeks, I received chilling letters from him, filled with cryptic messages about the shadows and how they were still watching me. I changed my locks, moved to a different city, and sought therapy to help me heal from the trauma he had inflicted. As time passed, the fear began to fade, but the memory of the shadow-obsessed boyfriend still haunts me. I never understood what drove him to insanity, what twisted his mind and convinced him of the existence of malevolent shadows. But I've learned one thing for sure. Love can blind us to the darkest aspects of a person, and sometimes the horrors we face come from the ones we least expect. I look into the mirror, my reflection staring back at me, a stranger in my own skin. Dark circles shadow my eyes, my once vibrant hair dull and lifeless. I am a shell of the person I once was, a victim of a love that has turned into a nightmare. It started so innocently, a whirlwind romance that swept me off my feet. He was everything I had ever wanted in a man, charming, attentive, and seemingly devoted. But as the weeks turned into months, his true nature began to emerge. He was possessive and controlling, demanding to know my every move. He would fly into jealous rages at the slightest provocation, accusing me of cheating with everyone I spoke to. I tried to reason with him, to make him understand that his behavior was unacceptable, but it was like talking to a brick wall. Then came the physical abuse. It started with small things, a shove here, a slap there, but it quickly escalated to more serious violence. He would beat me until I couldn't stand, then leave me to cower in fear, too terrified to seek help. I was trapped, isolated from my friends and family, my life completely under his control. I felt like a prisoner in my own home, my every move dictated by my captor. One night, it all went too far. He came home in a rage, fueled by alcohol and jealousy. He accused me of cheating on him, of plotting to leave him. I denied it, but he didn't believe me. He lunged at me, his hands around my throat, choking me until I could barely breathe. I thought I was going to die. But then, I saw something in his eyes, something that made my blood run cold. It wasn't just rage, it was madness. He was no longer the man I had fallen in love with. He was a monster. I fought back, scratching and clawing at him. I managed to break free from his grip and ran for the door. He chased after me, but I was too fast. I stumbled out into the night, barefoot and bleeding, but alive. I never looked back. I spent the next few months in a safe house, recovering from my physical and emotional wounds. It was a long and difficult process, but with the help of therapy and the support of my loved ones, I slowly began to piece my life back together. I still have nightmares sometimes, reliving the horrors of my past. But I am no longer afraid. I am a survivor. I have learned to trust my instincts and to never let anyone control me again.